Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this issue of Monday Morning Marketing Memo, and I'm here with our brand manager, Allie Cole, and my daughter. How you doing, Allie?
I'm well. How about yourself?
Doing fine, doing fine. Today, we're going to talk about something that I have used for 20 plus years and to help market. And over the years, I've gotten, at times I've used them very heavily, and then they became overly saturated, in my opinion. And now people are clamoring for more good content. And that is our use of webinars. Now, I'm not talking about the little 2 or 3 minute or 10-minute like little podcasts that we're doing there. I'm talking the old-fashioned 45-minute to 1 hour webinars that give you, they're for education, but they also position you as an expert. Allie, kind of explain how those webinars are going to work as far as positioning.
Again, it's all about content marketing. So you really want people coming to you for information, and doing something like a webinar, you can go through and talk about topics that you see that your clients are struggling with. Like for us with the collection agency, we can look at and be like, wow, these are the most industries where people get backdoor hired in. This is like the hottest position that people get backdoor hired in, and we can talk about that. And so if you're a recruiter that specializes in like doctors, then you're going to want to maybe listen to our webinars and see, is that something that gets backdoor hired more often? Is it something that you don't have to worry about as much? And just really touch on that.
So it's a way for us not to as much promote our business, but to almost artificially create the same rapport, at least in my opinion, as we have with our best clients. Clients that I've had, for 10, 20, 30 years, they know that if they have an issue, they can pick up the phone and they can call me and they can say, hey, Wilson, here's the issue I'm having. How should I handle this in the future? And so it builds that rapport, but it also gives them, it's not anytime that you're going to do a webinar, you don't make it an infomercial, because if you make it an infomercial, people are going to check out. It has to be stuff that most people should pay for. One thing, we feel like, especially with the one webinar that Allie's talking about, and I wanted to not doing a plug for it in this podcast, but if you're a recruiter and you want to know behind the numbers with our company, Backdoor Hire Solutions, we process millions and millions of records every single month. And so we know the number one positions, we know the number one industry, and the webinar that we're actually doing here in a few weeks is going to break down those numbers and share them with our clients, to where if you're in these industries, it's not good, bad, or indifferent. Just know that some industries have a higher, in positions have a higher risk of being backdoor hired. But also, staying true to what we're talking about here, is we're going to tell you what you can do on your end to find those backdoor hires on your own. If you use us, great. If you don't use us, I still want you to find the backdoor hires. So we're going to break down some of those algorithms. Our point with you is you're a recruiting or staffing expert. There's certain things that you share with your clients that build that rapport to where they look at you as a trusted advisor, as somebody on their team. In my opinion, the webinars do that same way of positioning you. And Allie's absolutely right. In the modern age, we hear a lot about content marketing. Webinars, in my opinion, were one of the original features of webinar content. Now, Allie, I know you put together a list of basically the perfect marketing, or the perfect webinar, as far as the sequential elements of a webinar. And so I know you're going to share that with them. What's your email address if somebody wants that template that we use? How do they get in touch with you? And you're going to send it to them free so they can do their own magic webinar.
Absolutely. My email address is Ally, ALLY, @elocglobal.com. And I would be more than happy to send that out. And then if you have any further questions, if it's just something that makes sense or you just want me to explain something more, I would be more than happy to do that too.
Excellent. And one thing, if you've ever been on our webinars in the last 5 years or 6 years, I can tell you, you cannot tell if they are live or if they're Memorex. And there again, I'm showing my age. And if you're not where you used to record on cassettes, and you're not going to know what that phrase means, but we use an evergreen type webinar. And here's the deal. If you sit on one of my webinars, you will not be able to tell if it's live going on at that particular point, because if it starts at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, it's going to start at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, whether I'm there or not. But I may have recorded that webinar last week or 2 years ago, and it's a way to where once you do that webinar, it's on autopilot. And there's plenty of platforms out there that you can sign up for. There again, if you don't want to deal with the marketing follow-up and the promotion of a webinar or whatever, if you want us to do it, literally for a couple of $100 a month, we can put your entire webinar platform on autopilot. After you record it once, your clients would never be able to tell if it's live or if it's recorded. Regardless if you use us for that or not, email Ally, and it kind of walks you through how you set that up to where they're evergreen. One of the things that we do is we tell all of our listeners with the webinars is because of the volume, which is true, if it's 10 or if it's 200 people on that webinar, we're going to mute the lines anyway, because if not, you'd have the constant tapping or phones ringing. And so we say, if you have a question, go ahead and email us and we'll answer a question during the webinar. Or if we don't have an opportunity to go in depth, either myself or somebody from my staff will reach out to you. The second that you do that, you just set the ability to make it evergreen, because people, next time the recording's playing, they hear that. I'm out sometimes on the golf course and I start getting emails where people are asking me questions. It's like, what's going on? And then it dawns on me, there's a webinar running right now. So there's some techniques that we can share with you on Ally's checklist. It kind of walks you through a script that is going to be super easy to do, and it's positioned us as experts in our industry for a decade or two. Ally, any closing?
Oh, sorry, what?
Any closing thoughts, or what were you about to say?
I was just about to say, like, you really touched on something very important with evergreen content, where you might be talking about something that might not be relevant to the person at that time, but you might want to have it up more than once, because again, I go back to our AER where it's collections. If I don't have a backdoor hire out, I don't want to listen to that webinar. It's not a problem for me yet. But if I get a couple months down the road and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I might have a problem, then I want to go and listen to the webinar. So it really can pay off to have it out there more than once, because you want the client to be able to hear it when it's relevant to them, not when it's relevant to you.
Well, and that's a good point, and I'm glad you mentioned that up, because a lot of people say, I don't want to be talking about the same thing always, always, always. And you don't want to be talking to them on an hourly basis, but you've got 2 or 3, basically you being a staffing or recruiting firm, have 2 or 3 things that you do really good that you could constantly talk about. And the problem, in my opinion, is if they don't have a need, it's not that they don't hear it, they don't even see your ad. It's, let me give you the best example. When you go out and you buy a new car, and let's just say that it's a white Honda Accord. You go out and you buy a white Honda Accord. As soon as you start driving in that white Honda Accord, you start looking, and that's, you make that decision. All of a sudden you start seeing white Honda Accords everywhere. My point being is, until you have a need or an interest, everything else is a scotoma. You just don't see it. And one of the things that recruiters are going to have is the same problem from a marketing standpoint that the collection agency has. is with Adams, Evans, and Ross is if somebody doesn't have a need, they don't want to think about us. They don't really want to even talk about it. Same way if you're a recruiter, if you've got, full staff and you're not looking at expanding, then there's no reason to talk to you about it. But the second that you have somebody fall off your payroll or you're going through an expansion mode, that's when you want to be in front and top of mind. And the trick is to do it with good quality content. And the rule of thumb to utilize is you want something that is so good people would pay to attend. That's the quality of webinar that you want. Not an infomercial. If you want to do a little 2-minute plug, and there's a template that we give you that can be where we can show you how to do it tastefully, but you don't turn it into an infomercial. Last closing thoughts, Allie, before we wrap it up.
I think we've pretty much covered it all. Just, I think the template would really help if someone has further questions. But I pretty much said everything that I need to say. Well,
outstanding. Well, we will roll this out until next week. And if anybody has any questions, or if you want the template or the script that we use, and it literally walks you through step by step by step what we do whenever we're doing a webinar, email Allie, A-L-L-Y, at elocglobal.com, which Eloc Global is the parent company of Recruiting and Staffing Solutions, Adams, Evans, and Ross, Backdoor Hire, and a few others. But Allie, I appreciate you joining me today.
Great talking to you.